Warm welcome from grayish Berlin, Germany, on behalf of the entire Airline Crewing Enigma community, especially also on behalf of Claire Tate, Marcel Sol, and Leonie, who are already here on stage. I welcome you to our presentation about the project Genesis, also on behalf of Antonius, of course. Thank you for joining. I think this is today a very special moment because it will be potentially the largest panel till now. And before we jump into the general presentation or discussion about Project Genesis, please allow me to give you some more background information, how this all happened and why we are now here. So it all began 1st of August 2022, when Claire Tate and we had a virtual espresso. The root cause for this virtual espresso was because I'm also running Ladies Beyond Flying, an aviation women group with almost 1,000 members. And I wanted to have her as a speaker in December 2022. And over the course of our virtual espresso, we realized that we both work, of course, in the same industry. We met at the NACU conference in November 2017 and kept contact since that time. And so we were discussing why we are not also creating something together. So next day, I opened up the LinkedIn group, Airline Crewing Enigma, and this was somehow the birth of our community. And we started with some roundtable discussions where the key person for the Project Genesis discussion was Paul Donaghy, who joined. It was one of the best moments last year for me because we met virtually and we had quickly the same vibrations. And I remember I looked in my files, 22nd September 2022, Marcel, Paul, and we had a call because Paul wanted to have a Project Genesis, as he called it, and he was discussing the idea of creating a manual. And this was then the reason why we were then starting a work group. And in the meantime, because we were also discussing who is somehow the target audience for this manual, how shall this also align with Agiforce, because Marcel is one of the chairs of the Agiforce crew, and I'm also strongly supporting Agiforce since many years, and it was a fantastic moment at the Agiforce Symposium last year in Toulouse that Agiforce was endorsing the Airline Crewing Enigma and was also presenting this initiative to their members. And we were then starting to work on Project Genesis. In fact, that was Paul's idea and his framework he had in mind, that we shall create a manual describing the different processes in airline crewing. We were creating a group and subgroups where the team members were then jointly working on the various chapters. And of course, initially we had to debate, is it realistic to have a manual? Every airline is different. Some airlines have a union, other airlines don't have a union. Then you have different business models, different geographies, and always airlines tend to say they are so unique, it is not possible to have standards in play. And I was then somehow recalling, after reading a report, how they tried to come to an agreement for the climate change summits. And I suggested the same approach for the creation of the manual, that we all create the manual, and where people have a doubt or concern, that we mark this and then agree on the elimination of as many as possible comments and remarks. And the outcome is really that we created a manual which is describing the various areas in crew planning. Of course, the first version, which we have sent around to everybody who wanted to have it completely. We have sent you the sneak preview a couple of weeks back. And all of you who were willing to read it already completely, some of you were also so helpful to give us very comprehensive feedback. I remember Philip and I also remember Alex. They were really giving very comprehensive feedback. Thank you for that. Of course, the current draft is not complete, but we believe it's a good starting point for discussion. And this is the current team which is working on Project Genesis. And these are, in fact, today the panelists. I have put everybody from you already in the spotlight, and I invite you now also to just introduce you and also tell you what were your first thoughts when Paul came with this idea, and what brought you to the point that at the end we were able to have a manual in place. And let's start with Claire, my co-partner here in this community, with whom all began on 1st of August last year.
Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
So my name is Claire Tate, and I am in Dallas, Texas in the US. I worked for 20 years at Southwest Airlines before leaving at the end of 2020. That's a lot of 20s. And now work as an independent consultant. So when I first heard about Project Genesis, I admit I was a bit skeptical. And my first question was, who is this for? Because all of us are experts in our various parts of crew planning, some of us in planning, some of us in crew tracking or recovery, and some of us in hoteling. And I think one of the problems identified, and again, one of the reasons we started the Airline Crewing Enigma, is that there isn't standardized training or curriculum for crew management. And that is part of the survey that Agaforce is doing with RMIT and Lufthansa Flight Operations Academy, is to investigate the demand for this and the desire for this. But we believe that after talking through it in our first few meetings about Project Genesis, that there is still a need, even if it's not training, for a general understanding, whether someone is new to the profession, new to the industry, a new leader at an airline who is responsible for or affecting crew management, to have a better understanding of the processes and how everything is interconnected. And even for someone in perhaps a vendor or someone working in software. So we decided that the manual would be kind of a general overview, try to identify as many similarities as possible. And we decided to make it about 5 pages in each section to start out with.
Marcel, I remember our first kickoff meeting, and you were also very skeptical. I think.
Yes. I think my exact words were, "Oh, this is never going to work."
Exactly.
And writing a manual that is the definitive manual for crew management for everything, for every airline, I am still convinced it's not going to work, because that would be too much. But I do believe in, and that's the reason why I joined this group, is that to get back to the point that Claire just mentioned, that there is this other project going on as a spin-off from the Agaforce, where we, together with the RMIT in Melbourne, try to ascertain if there is a need for standardization and certification in the crew management, just like what you see in dispatch, for instance. A dispatcher anywhere needs to have a certain certificate, in other words, otherwise he cannot dispatch a flight plan. And so the question there in that project is like, do we need something like this in crew resources and crew management in general? And then this project Genesis came along, and I felt the similarities between it, and I felt that creating a document like this, even if it is a very broad description, even if it is just the common denominator given by a few airlines at the startup phase, it is a perfect starting point for that discussion. Because you would, if you're from airline XYZ, you read this document and you don't recognize your operation in this, that is the perfect moment to ask the question: are they wrong or are we wrong? And that discussion is a fruitful one. So that's why I get enthusiastic, even though I still believe that we will not write the definitive crew management Bible.
Antonius, I remember you were joining the group and you were somehow explaining us interesting experience you were doing at your airline, because on one hand you had an internal project, and then you were also remembering some internal meetings, and then you thought this manual could be exactly also something for your own management. Maybe you want to elaborate on this, what you were telling us in some of the earlier calls. You're on mute, by the way.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now, okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Antonios Pitsiladis. I'm in Athens, Greece. 20 years in the airline, but only 2 years in crew planning. So yes, Daniel, when I started to look into crew planning, and I knew nothing about it 2 years ago. The first thing I also realized that it's a completely unstandardized area. I couldn't find anything anywhere to read about definitions. I was reading documents from some universities that they had different names. I didn't understand what is crew pairing, crew planning, crew management, manpower. What is the reason of it? Our management couldn't understand the crew planning guys. We couldn't talk the same language. So I was desperate to find something which I didn't care that it was the perfect guide, as Marcel says, but I just wanted to start as a basis to understand the basic, a basic department on a basic airline, and then of course each airline is different and different somewhere, but you have a standard, a basis, and then you can see who is deviating and why, to meet what challenges. So for me, it was when I saw this think tank starting, was a perfect timing in order to start understanding about this field, about this area. And I believe internally our managers that are not in crew planning, but they are affected from it, or they make decisions related to crew planning, they need education as well. So and not very deep education and very rocket science. So they need to understand some basics in order to be able to communicate with each other. So for me, it is a very nice experience to be part of this and looking at this guide. And I think I also see a very nice potential of later on getting deep into more details on specific areas of because we all have same challenges with different facts. What others are doing, how much automation they use, how many people they use per department or per area, and more to come on that.
Aditi, I remember last year, June, we had a fantastic panel discussion organized by Marcel in the context of Agiforce crew management. Then you said an important sentence. I think the outcome is that we have now this project with the Australian university. And then you also got promoted at Indigo Airlines. So you're a manager, you're building your team. And I believe, if I understood correctly, you were partially also using the manual for your new hire. Is this correct?
That's right, Daniel. So my intention around that was, so while we were talking about at the AgiForce panel discussion, that a lot of what we do currently, us as airlines, because the scheduler job is so important or a crew planner job is so important, it takes us a very long time to really train someone. And most of us in an airline are always extremely busy or are always occupied with something or the other. So it almost feels like we're running a parallel university in training everyone, whoever we're hiring. So just the whole aspect that I wanted to achieve out of that discussion, and of course, the concept really changed with this Enigma group, and we got through the manual discussions. So of course, all of this is like a cherry on the cake. But what happened in that process is that we can develop someone for the new joiners as well as aspirants who are really keen on getting into the industry, who can start having some prior knowledge about what they're really getting into. So it serves as a good starting point where we are at right now in terms of understanding what are the different areas in a crew management piece, how do the different areas correlate with each other, and then people can start understanding their specializations or the area that they're keen on. Like certain area is actually very could be more AI driven, or certain areas could be more analytical driven, certain areas are more related to training driven. So based on the interest area, people can actually realize that it's these things that they are getting trained on in terms of AI or analytics or other areas. There are things in the aviation industry as well that kind of needs those specialization. Not many people would know about it, that there are different areas that people can look at when they join an airline. So of course, it'll be a good starting point for somebody who's interested in the aviation industry, a good starting point for somebody who's learning about crew management, and then we can develop. And at some point of time, we talk a lot about in the aviation industry about reinventing the wheel, that we don't always have to do that. We can learn from each other. We have such a strong community that Philip and Marcel are leading as AgiForce, or Daniel, you are conducting so many other sessions. So we have very strong community in the industry. So now that we're talking to each other so much, a lot of what we learn, if we start translating that in the manuals that we're trying to create, for everything, then we don't really have to spend a lot of time. We talk about scenarios, we talk about topics, and there are different kind of scenarios available, or for different scale or for different type, like a low cost versus a legacy, or full service, or a small airline versus a big airline. If the different options are there, every airline can use it, weigh the benefits and pros and cons of every scenario, and then take some informed decisions. Right now, because of lack of options or the kind of options anyone can think about, people are all trying to do their respective hidden trials. So somewhere, if we have the different options, then every airline can really assess what works for them and what does not. And at the same point of time, when all the problems and the solutions, or at least if I would say about 60-70% of the problems, if they are there, then somewhere even the vendors can really support it to automate a lot of this. So I feel a lot of automation in the industry can also get better if we actually have solutions somewhere. So that's the whole idea, which really I felt that all of us as part of the community member really have that responsibility to put it all together. And the more we interact in the group, from everyone who's joining in, the more ideas we get from everyone, or the situations or things that you see missing, the more we can get inputs around what needs to be added. We're ready to do the spade work and get it all together in the benefit of the industry.
I see a lot of head movements from Marcel and Claire and Leonie and Antonio, so I believe the other panelists agree with you. Leonie, you come now from another industry which is complementary to the airline industry, and you were very eager to join, and you have a very big ambition to also have a tighter collaboration between hotels and airlines. And so what motivated you to be part of this manual creation?
Yeah, it was really to build a bridge between the hotels and the airlines, and to create an understanding how the airline world works on the hotel side, because how it is right now is that each airline is working differently, has in regards to, for example, crew accommodation. The crew has to stay somewhere, so they're staying at the hotels, and there are lots of requirements in regards to crew accommodation and how to accommodate a crew at a hotel. And this is a tremendous task for the hotels. And for us, it was always hard to understand from the hotel side. I worked 20 years on the hotel side, why the process behind it is so difficult, why we just can't get the rooming list already 2 months in advance, and why the patterns are why it's so complicated to receive the patterns of the crews, and because it's all related to the contracting, to the people then staying at the hotels. And this was always a very difficult task, and I wanted to deep dive into those subjects and really understand the difficulties behind it, and also in order to educate our hotel community around it. And this is really what we are doing. We're trying to be really a connector between the airlines and the hotels, and have a very holistic approach. And this project is tremendously important because it's standardizing processes and systems, and that's exactly what we are looking for, to have a standardized process, to make it easier for both sides, to save our resources on both sides, because this is what we don't have anymore. We don't have enough resources anymore to really accommodate those administrative processes, and this is what we would like to facilitate for both parties, and to create a really understanding on both sides. And that's why it was so important for me to be part of the group, to be in the group, and to really deep dive into the problems as well that you are seeing on your side, and to kind of implement it as well on our side, and take into consideration how we work on the hotel side on it, and to build trainings around it, how hotels accommodate airline crews. I always say there is a crew fit for every hotel. We just have to find the right one, and that's really what it is. Yeah, if it's a seller or buyer's market, the crew always has to stay somewhere. And that's a very exciting task right now. And I'm very keen to see how our systems in the future can work better together on the hotel side and on the airline side, that they can speak to each other. And we actually do not have to have so many manual tasks in between. So I know it's a long way to go, but we are working on it. And I strongly believe this group is a start.
Claire, we were asking we were inviting everybody to give us initial feedback on the sneak preview. I think you got some feedback, interestingly, primarily from vendors, but then we were asking almost all attendees, or all were registered, whether they would be willing to spend some more time before the session and read it completely. And we got some feedback. So how is this feedback resonating for you? Is it giving you also a sense of fulfillment because you were reading something which goes in the right direction, or was it completely out of line and you got the sense, oh, what have we produced there?
Yes, so we got some good feedback when we sent out the initial sneak preview to the entire group, and I think some of us posted it on LinkedIn outside the Enigma group. We had a handful of survey responses, and then we got much more detailed feedback when Daniel sent out the full first draft of the manual at the end of last week. So that's fantastic. It makes me think we're on the right track. So everyone who responded said they can see that it could be useful. And so far it's quite clear. Some of the initial feedback we got, at least from one person, was that it would be more useful in a different medium. So right now it's basically in a PDF of a Word document. But if we had it more as a booklet with more visuals, that would be quite helpful. And we agree. And certainly at the beginning, Leonie had suggested, and again, she's newer to crew planning than most of us, coming from the hoteling side, to have videos and explanations. And that for many people is a preferred way of learning. That also, takes much more effort and time. And all of us are doing this on a volunteer basis in addition to our full-time jobs. So that is definitely something that we can think about for the future. Some of the other feedback we got is just on, terminology and maybe having more consistent. The way we went about the manual is we broke up into subgroups, and our different subgroups worked each on a section. And then once we did that, we kind of pulled it all together, and I used the survey that we did. And I know some of you are newer to the Airline Crewing Enigma group, but when we first started it at the end of August last year, we did a survey on terminology to kind of see what the most commonly used terms were. And we saw they were more regional. Of course, we're doing the survey in English and the manual is in English. And we acknowledge that many people are not performing their jobs in English in crew planning. But even we saw the terminology varied quite a bit by region. So there are some terms like crew scheduling is much more common in North America, and crew control is more common in other parts of the world. So we saw a need for standardization of terminology, and we can probably still do some work on that. And we got some excellent feedback on just overall grammatical and typographical errors. So I can take responsibility for that. I did a lot of the editing and I missed some things. So thank you very much for that. And probably the biggest feedback we got on content that I've seen so far is in the manpower planning section. The manual is focused more on a number of aircraft and hours, so on that calculation. And an alternate calculation is on duty days, and I think Perrin gave us that feedback, which that resonated with some of us who are working on Project Genesis, because those are sometimes more helpful if an airline has work rules that are based more on days off or on days worked, or is maybe more in long haul, where the crews may be staying in a layover for multiple days. That's a more accurate way or a more helpful way. So that's something we can definitely incorporate into the manual. But we would love to get more feedback, and we'll be looking for that in our survey form.
Perrin, as your name was already mentioned from Claire, would you like to give us your feedback after reading it through and how this manual is resonating with you?
Pleasant evening to all. Perrin Tate from Flydeel, Saudi Arabia. I think I know some of you in the group. At DT, we worked before. Claire, we had correspondence before. So in reference to the manual, I think it's an excellent initiative, but I think it's mainly focused on carriers that more do so one-day trips or probably two-day trips, right? Or having a pairing that goes overlaps into day two. For example, here at the airline that I work with, we have a number of pilots on rotations, and ours is not so much of a factor when you have crew that's operating on a 2010 rotation. Yeah, we try to get a maximum in between, but when you look at the rest rules and you look at training and all of that, you're sort of restricted in a 20-day period. You're restricted to like about 14 days, 15 days, and you want to have maximum utilization of the crew. So ours is not so much of a restriction here, but more so in terms of days, and especially if you not have a scheduler that's efficient, then you struggle. And then if that airline, like for example with us, we're planning to go international, and most of the international sectors are not daily, so you would have to bring in a mix of layovers and stuff. So for me, I'm more shorter than an hours. So I'm more so focused on the manpower. But when I looked at the crew control aspect of it, I think we can get into some more details in terms of, okay, generally, what should a crew controller take into consideration if he's activating someone from standby, or generally, what does he take if a flight is disrupted? Some general checklist points, same go with training planning, the training aspect of it. Some airlines have training disruptions versus training planning department. So you look at, okay, what if a crew has failed his or her training? What are some of the general steps that you'd need to focus in? So for new hires, as the DT was mentioning, when you have new hires, you can get these general basics with your new hires, and then obviously as the person gain experience, then they're able to think outside the box more. So these were my general feedback from looking at the manual. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perron is much appreciated. I think this is exactly now the foundation of further discussions, and you are highly welcome to join the Project Genesis group. Everybody here in the call is now invited to join, because we have just started to create this manual, and everybody who likes to add to it and wants to contribute to this community, please get in touch with us. And what you said, Perron, is spot on. It's just the beginning, and not every aspect of airline crewing in the world, or every country, of course, is at the moment considered. I would like to also call Philip to the session, because you gave also very comprehensive feedback, and maybe and you worked also for several airlines. Now you changed the sites. Maybe you also want to give your feedback, especially being also the co-chair of Agiforce Crew.
Good morning. Hello. Am I hearable?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's not much I can say without repeating what has been said already. Those of you who were already in the lucky position of having to find something about EASA FTL might have stumbled across about this fancy website, Understanding EASA FTL 2016. Pretty sure every one of us was already on that page. And that's what I think is a very good offering, let's say, to anyone, depending on or irrespective on which level, to transfer certain knowledge. And I would appreciate if the information collected from this initiative could be brought to the public through such a low entry channel, and then it can grow, and then it can even have the technology is out there. It can have discussions and gets rephrased or more precisely made, or what was just mentioned, that different airlines, different business models, different regions have different challenges. For instance, how to steer production. The one more duty days, the other credit hours, the next block hours, and so on. And this is something where it can grow on, but basically not. So moving away from the, let's say, PDF into something more open would be something I appreciate.
Thank you, Philip. So I would open the stage for everybody who also wants to raise his ideas, express a concern, formulate an idea, a requirement which should be added to the manual. You all got the sneak preview, so you know the content, or at least you can know it. Please let us know what you have in mind, because the panelists would like to hear your ideas and feedback. Fabio.
Good evening, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes,
and ladies?
very good.
Hi guys, hello from Abu Dhabi. I unfortunately, Danny, I have not received, or I think I missed if you sent the manual, so I've not had a chance to read it. So I don't know the inside out. It's the first time I join you. It's a pleasure for me to join you guys. Maybe if on the next session, I'll be able to give you some more feedbacks. So if you'd be able to share to me the manuals, would be great. I'll have a good read. I'm more than happy to share some feedback. No issue with that. Previously, I wanted to join. Unfortunately, been busy. Tonight, finally free. So it's been great to understand what you guys trying to do. I do, from what I understand and from what I gather from the discussions, you try to create a manual which has some basic understanding of the job and the requirements or some scenarios and the SOPs that different people can encounter in starting a job and elaborate from there to make an expanded kind of SOP that could fit several purposes. I do agree with Marcel on when he said there's going to be a very difficult task to fit every airline because every line, it's also a fact that many airlines use different systems. Systems sometimes do create their own SOPs. The unfortunate situation that based on the system, you also there create some SOPs and vice versa, right? So, but anyway, this is at the moment, as I say, I can't say much, but happy to join you guys in discussion each session. And yeah, if you can share the manual, I'd be more than happy to help out.
Thank you, Fabio. Miguel, you raised your hand.
Hi, good afternoon, Daniel. We talked a couple of times back last year when I was in Smart Links, and good afternoon, Marcel, as well. We crossed our paths a few times in Qatar Airways. We shared the elevator a few times in Tower 1 over there. Yes, I will also love to be part of this amazing opportunity and share my experience for which I have both in commercial and executive aviation. Thank you. I just received the manual. I will have a look and I will provide my feedback over there and the ideas and suggestions that I may eventually bring into this discussion. In fact, right now I am developing several different manuals for both planning, crew planning, and crew travel as well. So they will be really helpful to be part of this.
Yeah, the explanation can be simply I'm not connected with everybody in LinkedIn, and then I'm not having the email address from everybody. Yeah, and that's why I can only send it to everybody where I have the email address. So if you share the email address, you get everything.
No worries. I just moved recently between jobs, so maybe you have my former email account. So maybe it's the reason why.
Fabio, you should also have the manual now. Anybody else who has a question to the audience, a comment?
Thank you, Daniel. I'll have a look. Thanks.
Gustavo, you got the link. Thank you for emailing me. Do you have a question on the manual? Long time no see.
No, thank you. Thank you for the link. Yes, I got it. I'm glad to see you, Claire. Glad to see you, Marcel. It's always nice. I pay a lot of attention to everything that you guys publish, and I think it's a great thing. I think I've been in the airline industry for 31 years now. So every time you move from one company to another company on a different vendor, it is difficult to understand a common language. So I think it's a great starting point for everybody to understand each other. And also for the people that are joining the airline industry to understand what we talk about, because it's not a common type of terminology that we use. So it's very difficult when you move from one country to another or from one airline to another to see exactly what we're talking about. So it is a great thing, and I think I support the idea that this is a very difficult area. This is a critical area for industry, and we need to be able to have some sort of structure in terms of training that goes along the different airlines, right? It's not only one place that is going to do it in one way and the other place going to do it in a different one. I think this has to be a little bit more structured in terms of training and just be just like you have been talking about, just like dispatch or any other airlines that have this kind of responsibility. So thanks again, guys, for inviting me, and glad to see you again, guys.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think initially I forgot to attach the attachment, and then you reminded me, and then you got hopefully the attachment. So, do you like to share your thoughts on the menu?
I got it, and I'm so sorry I didn't read it on the weekend. I have to do it this evening. I'm so sorry about it.
But it's no problem. Marcel, Claire, Antonius, Leonie, Diti, and me, we love chocolate or ice cream. So from that perspective, everything can be managed.
No, I will do it this evening or tomorrow and give you the feedback with the link you sent me.
All good, all good. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to join Project Genesis and work on the manual with us?
We probably don't need to decide here and now, but
but
let us
some
know.
people are very eager and others have to sleep over, of course. I know we are working in a very, very shy industry, so that's why not everybody is raising his voice. But so might be that Rajesh, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello from Fly Dubai in Dubai. I think I'm glad to have stumbled upon the LinkedIn invite, and I'm glad I've joined the group. And I think the objective that this group has been formed for makes me think worthwhile of this group, and will be happy to contribute in any way I can, given the constraints of time, of course. Some topics that come to mind, which I must admit that I haven't gone through the manual in detail, but some thoughts that come to mind is the impact of, we have tools like trip trades, and which is called as swaps in some airlines, how they impact, whether we analyze trip trades versus safety, should we allow crew members to swap into things that are fatiguing, which is a very hot word at the moment. That's one of the discussions that we have internally as well. Disruption recovery, I think at some stage we will talk about tools in our future discussions, or they can probably be a quick reference guide on how to initially start looking at disruption recovery. And one question that came to mind after going through the content that I received was some basic KPIs to help measure performance that could be shared across the group. I know every airline have different ways of measuring their own performance, but something standardized, whether they want to use it or not, is something they can choose to. But I think that will be a good value add.
Thanks, Rajesh. So in general, to sum it up, we are not trying to make rocket science. We just want to share industry's best practice, and we also want to foster networking, because if somebody at an airline has a challenge, maybe somebody else can help and give maybe a first support. And I think feeling not alone is already better than trying to, as Aditi said, reinvent the wheel. Just learning from other industry colleagues how they solved a similar problem. And I think together we are stronger than working alone. So Marcel, you are preparing the Agiforce conference at the moment together with Philip.
Yes, it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think we were also discussing about the Enigma and Project Genesis. Is there something planned already? Is there already something you would like to announce, or is it too early and we have to wait a while?
The agenda is more or less full. Philip knows exactly how full it is because he is our agenda man, the agenda dude, as we call him. He is, but it's shaping up pretty nicely. We have a panel discussion on the second day of the Agiforce. It is actually in Santiago de Chile, 22nd until the 24th of May. If you want to join, by all means do go to agiforce.org, agiforce.org, and you'll find all the details. So in the panel discussion, which is going to be presided by, we have a really good moderator there, a guy called Daniel Stegger. You may have heard of him. So that's going to be very related to the other project that I talked about earlier, the standardized training. But we also plan to have, at least we're looking into a possibility to having also this Enigma project on the agenda. So yeah, and that's the nice part about that community, because this actually is face to face. We're actually going to be in the same room. We're going to have drinks and dinners, and at night we're going to have a wine tasting somewhere. So this is the perfect moment to dive deep into any topic that touches this Enigma project. So yeah, but by all means, everybody join in. So yeah, that's what's happening there.
Question to all panelists who worked also for an airline, or you have a full-time job. What motivated you to allocate your free time for the manual? And second question, how much time was it? As an explanation for other colleagues who contemplate to join us, that they have somehow a sense how much work it was to create what we have now, and what is somehow expected from them to allocate from their private time. Maybe Aditi, you start?
Sure, Daniel. So I think we touched upon it in the beginning, that what was in it for us. I think the whole idea wherein when we interact with our industry colleagues and we see the similar sort of problems everyone's facing, I think that in itself was a big driver for us to get together to standardize something and put together everything that we've learned. I think the biggest takeaway that I had was, if in any way we can give back to the industry, I think this is the best way that we could. So it's almost like a prodigy. It's almost like something that will be there in black and white in terms of what we have learned over the years. So I think if we can contribute in the same manner, get it out somewhere so that everyone can use and we can help in different ways, I think that's just a small way of contributing to the industry that we have. And in terms of time, I don't think it took more than an hour or two every week, rather, and I'm talking per week. So even if we spent like 2 dedicated hours one day, most of it was possible. And I think I just saw a question. So we have different platforms, and of course, Daniel can talk about different platforms. But when we divided the different parts out of all of us, then we could just work on every part ourselves and just email it back. We have different other platforms as well that we use, but then emails we thought were the easiest, that we could all put in our parts and send it back. And then Claire was nice enough to kind of put it together, do the editing and stitch it together. So that's why we have to spend more time in putting all the facts together, more of content. And once all the content is there, then we just kind of clean it up. So even if you spend an hour and a half, 2 maximum per week, you can actually write a lot of stuff at one place, and then we all discuss, see what we need to change, what needs to be added, which continent is not really covered in whatever we've written, or which type of scale of operations or type of operation is not covered, and then we kind of discuss it and then re-edit it. So it doesn't take away too much time.
Leah.
So I originally, when I was working in crew planning, was part of the North American Crew Utilization Group. And we met usually 2 times a year at industry conferences. But I've always felt like there needed to be more information available to people entering the profession. And even within our own organization, we kind of struggled to educate our own leaders and using different terminology and even different parts of crew management. So I think having something that helps with the language and helps with the concepts is really helpful. One thing I want to point out is even if we do things differently across airlines and across continents, different regions of the world, I think there is sort of a shared mentality and shared concepts that are beneficial to understand. And Clay Springer, who's part of the Airline Crewing Enigma group, he is starting a human factors subgroup as well. So if you're less interested in sort of the how-to or the manual and more interested in how to be an effective crew planner or crew scheduler, or how to effectively communicate with crews, if you're interested in more of the human factor side, that may be a great initiative for you. And there is an initial kickoff meeting 1 week from today. There's 2 different times that Clay has offered. So that is available on our Airline Crewing Enigma page.
Antonius, you work as a captain too, so you have to fly from time to time, and still you spend some time for the manual.
Yeah. My primary job is to fly, so I'm 20 years a captain. But the last 2 years, I spent in the airline 70% of the time on the project on crew planning, on helping on the transformation to embed more automation and optimization inside. So for me, the main driver, although I had to spend free time on this project, is to speed up the onboarding side in crew planning. So yeah, Aditi is right, about 1 or 2 hours per week. But I'm already doing more on my own time apart from this, in order to understand more, to speed up the time that I get to understand all these crew planning mystery. But 1-2 hours per week is enough. And also getting to know other people, see how they approach the same problems as you said, and how they're doing, how much automation, what is manual. It gives a lot of insights that I can bring back to my company. And also, what I also wanted to add as an expression, it's all about the journey towards the manual. It doesn't matter if we're gonna make the perfect manual at the end. It's more value to do the journey than to reach the destination.
Thank you, Antonio. So we are pretty much at the end of the session. Just let me show you the 158 airlines we have meanwhile. So it's really a global network where you can now make use of it. If you want to join Project Genesis, please get in contact with Claire or me. And it's also important to say a big thank you to Paul Donashy, who was not able to make it today because he is the brain and the father of Project Genesis. By the way, it was also his suggestion to name the group Enigma. Initially, it was Airline Crew Management Expert Think Tank, and I think it's a good idea that we are working jointly to solve the enigma of airline crewing. This is what this group is all about. Thank you, Claire, Aditi, Leonie, Antonius, and Marcel, and everybody who joined the session. It was great having you with us. I can also see that not many have dropped off, even we are 8 minutes beyond the expected time. I think I take it as a sign of eagerness that you want to have more sessions. By the way, everybody who wants to give an own focus topic presentation, please get in touch with us. I was already asking many of you. We don't want to have many vendor presentations because this is part of the Agifos in Santiago de Chile. We want to hear from airlines, what you do in your local business, how you are coping with the challenges, and please share best practice that other colleagues can also learn from you. Don't be shy. We are not biting, as you can see. We are all...
I sometimes do, but...
Yeah, but this is Agifos. This is different. Enigma, we are not biting.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Please stay healthy and safe. Share with me your email address if you have not shared it yet, and I will send to everybody the manual, and looking forward to hearing from you, and was nice having you with us. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.